All right. So we should be live. If you guys can just let me know how the sound and video quality is, just to make sure that everything's working okay. And I'm just going to quickly pull up the video. Hope everyone is having a good Sunday. People are saying it sounds good. All right, excellent. How's everyone doing today? Aloha from Hawaii. Hey, Winters and Jamie and Pokey Barn. Graded Pokey, channel 808 Life. How you guys doing? You say Booyah and Paul. Wait a minute as people kind of come in. Hey, Josh. So as people kind of start to come in here, if you guys haven't been here before, the way the live streams work is I start with Patreon questions, which I'm going to jump into. We have 4 for today, and that allows those Patreon members to get their questions answered in a I'm able to get those questions beforehand, research them a little if necessary, think about them a little bit before the live, so I can give them the best possible answers. And it allows those questions to be at the beginning, so those people can find those questions. Once we're done with those 4 Patreon questions, then we will jump into any questions that non-Patreon members want answered, and you guys can just start dropping those in the chat. I will try to go through them one by one. I may skip some because we normally get so many questions that we don't have a chance to get through them all in the 2-hour period. So my plan going forward is also to try and get a nice range and variety of questions. So if I skip your question, it may be because we already answered it, and you can check that out somewhere else, or maybe we recently answered it on a live or somewhere else on the channel that's easily accessible. That way we can get the most useful information for the most people out there, okay? So as always, appreciate you guys joining me on this live, and appreciate all the great and thoughtful questions. All right, so I think we will jump in to give me 1 second to pull up the questions for this week. I want to check one thing on the video just to make sure that it's going, that it's running smoothly. Okay, looks like it is running smoothly. All right, so the first question. I've heard you talk a lot about gold stars, but would love to hear your thoughts on the EX cards from that era. I've done a lot of research and have been collecting them because those are the cards I remember chasing as a kid, and the Gen 3 games were the ones I grew up playing. What I really want to know is how collectible or how interested in them were people before all the hype that's come to Pokemon. Everyone is looking for the next big thing, and I'm trying to determine if the price increases they've seen are more due to speculation than genuine collector interest. I wasn't around in 2019, so I don't have a great grasp of the price history. The second question is if you have a favorite EX card. Yeah, fantastic question. And you're definitely thinking, I think you're thinking you're the way you're framing this question is very thoughtful, and I think you're already thinking about the right sort of fundamentals and dynamics and asking the right type of question that will actually get you information that's useful. So that's a very good sign. So mostly the cards that people were really going after before this boom period were the gold stars. There were a certain number of collectors who were very interested in the EX cards, both the Japanese EX cards. This is the small, lowercase EX cards from those sets. But I think the wider group of collectors was more interested in the gold stars, and then there were plenty of people who weren't even interested in the gold stars and were just sort of WotC, Wizards of the Coast collectors. And I would say that was probably true for a couple years. Gold stars had a few periods where they became really hot and where they bumped really high up in price, and they actually retraced a little bit from some of those periods like 2 years ago now. Small retraces. This year, they've all been going up a lot. They've been doing really well. I wouldn't say that they're going up more than Wizards of the Coast. I think on average, we've seen, some cards have gone up quite a bit in terms of the multiple, but I would say the average, a lot of the cards have gone up probably 5 times in value, 5 to 10 times in value, which is an insane increase in value, of course, but that's very similar and the same type of range we're seeing for most of Wizards of the Coast holos. So they're moving quite similarly, which I think is very interesting. And I also think is promising in terms of that a wide variety of people are really interested in them, and probably a lot of the same people who are interested in Wizards of the Coast are also interested in that era, which I think really shows that era is very vintagey for most people, and people who are interested in vintage Pokemon collecting also tend to be interested in that era overall. I think the majority of people would be. So, as I said before, the gold stars were the ones that were always had, the most value and the most popularity, and then as cards started to go up in value, the EX has definitely got more and more people started to buy them. Those really went up in value this year as well, and now we're also seeing like regular holos, reverse holos, with the stamp of like the set name on those really start to take off as well. In fact, some of those have actually gone up a lot more than anything else. Some one-off cards, I would be careful about that, and that's part of why it's so important to know the price history, to know, if you're looking at cards that have really gone up 5 to 10 times in value this year, which again is an insane increase in value, that isn't out of line with the market. If you're looking at cards that have gone up a lot more than that as a multiple, I would be careful buying into those unless you really understand why they've gone up that much, or you feel like they were really undervalued before this period and thus are having a sort of larger positive correction during this period up. So you do have to be careful though, because two things. One, the incentive on a lot of these cards, so a lot of the EX cards, the lowercase EX cards, and the incentives particularly on the regular holo cards, there was very little incentive to grade those cards because they were going so cheaply. And so if you got like 9s, unless they were some of the higher end ones and the more popular ones, you would make a little bit of money, but if you got 8s, you'd probably like lose money on grading or break about even. So it just didn't provide incentive to grade all of those cards, whereas the gold stars, there was incentive to probably grade 8 or higher, even 7 or higher, and 6 and 5 and higher for the highest end gold stars for a while. So those pop reports are going to be more fully fleshed out. So you do have to be careful, particularly when buying lower than 10 gem mint cards. The cheaper the card, the historically the less people graded those, and so the more they're probably out there gem mint or sitting at PSA right now being ready to be graded. Now, the good thing about this era is that there just was very little of it. And it's old, so it's unlikely too many of these cards are going to survive in gem mint condition from people's binders, probably, as compared to pretty much every other era. I would venture a guess. I think we still have to worry, I think, more about even WotC holos and a lot of those increasing before we have to worry about some of the EXs from this era, particularly the most popular EXs, and then particularly the gold stars. So those are the two balances. It's just a very low printed era. As you can see, whenever you see like big sealed box collections, you're gonna see lots and lots of WotC boxes. You're gonna see the high end collection. You see a lot of WotC boxes, but most of that is gonna be from Base Set Unlimited, Jungle First Edition, Fossil First Edition, a little bit less the Gyms and Team Rocket. You're going to see a lot less of the Neos, you're going to see a lot less of E-Series, and you're going to see a lot less, generally speaking, of the original Nintendo EX era. And that is because very likely there's so much less of that out there, and so much less of it still sealed. And the expected value is so poor for opening these original Nintendo EX era boxes that it's likely that not a lot of them are ever going to get opened up. And so more of those mint cards are very unlikely to go on the market. It's part of why I was buying and investing and collecting so much in that era, particularly on the low end of it, like the PSA 10 regular holos, reverse holos, about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, where there was very little market for it, because that was my theory, was that although more of these will certainly be graded over time, I just didn't think there was that much sealed product out there, and I didn't think there was that many mint copies of a lot of these cards out there. And there's so many amazing holos and arts and reverse holos from that era that it also spreads out the ability to pull each individual holo or reverse holo from one of these packs and boxes. So all of that is really in its favor. Fantastic era. It's the original Nintendo era, and it's always, in my opinion, going to be, as long as Pokemon does well, is always going to be extremely historic, and I think will become more historic and more important as time goes on. I think, too, when modern drops off in price, even if it's not this modern era, but even 10 years from now, the next modern era, wherever it is, drops in price, it's just going to make this original Nintendo EX era more vintage, and when people see that the prices don't drop on these types of cards nearly as much as these other types of cards, they're going to flock to these safer, cooler, vintage, unique type arts, okay? All right, next question. Fantastic question. Oh, and then, sorry, the last part of your question is, do I have a favorite EX card? So when I read that and thought about it, I don't know if I have a single favorite one. A few popped into my head. One, so definitely a bunch of like the EX Team Rocket cards. There's so many, almost all of the dark cards from that set. The EXs and just the regular holos and the non-holos are fantastic, I think. Gyarados is one of my favorites. I love the birds, which are the EX cards. The Gyarados is a reverse holo or regular holo. Those are really cool. I love the some of the Suicune arts, some of the Rayquaza arts from the different sets are really great. Those are all some of my favorites. Next question is, hey Jake, could you talk on the psychology of collectibles? How much of it is nostalgia-based versus rarity-based, etc.? In addition, why are trading cards more valuable than other childhood nostalgia toys like action figures? In particular, I grew up with Beast Wars Transformers and have gotten into collecting sealed ones that I played with as a kid. To me, these are so undervalued compared to trading cards, and in addition, incredibly hard to find. As a psychologist, I would love your input. Thank you. Sure. All right. So trying to kind of tackle your question one thing at a time. So how much of it is nostalgia-based versus rarity-based? So it's very much both. So trying to think about these markets as supply and demand, which is what it is at the end of the day, which is what defines what a price is. When we're thinking about the supply side is rarity. Okay, how many of these are in the world? And if there are a lot more of something, then it becomes much easier to get. More people can have it, and so the price will come down as compared to something that's more rare, as long as the demand is equal for those two things. The other thing that can happen is that when we talk about making something collectible, if it's not really rare, it can feel not very collectible and fun to collect because there's no chase, there's no difficulty in obtaining it. and you can get it at any time. So there's none of that sort of incentive to purchase that item today, because that item is always going to be at that same price forever, versus something that's very collectible, which has that sort of that fun of like it could go up in value, or it could be harder to find in the future, or there are only so many of them, and that's exciting and fun. So that's the psychology behind that. And all of that affects demand, right? So creates a demand for items. When there aren't enough of an item, when an item goes up a lot in price, all of that stuff creates value in that item, that people see that item and then they value it, and so they want it, and then they're willing to pay more for it. And then you say, so why are trading cards more valuable than other childhood nostalgia toys like action figures? Yeah, great question. That's a question I've been thinking a lot about, and that's one thing that concerns me. Someone who's so invested and interested in cards, and I do own non-card collectibles as well, just a lot less. I think that for me, it's because I collected cards as a kid, and that's why the cards are so enjoyable for me. That's one reason, just kind of a personal reason. Two, they're easy to store. They're easy to display in a lot of different ways. I think that when you look at like bigger collectibles, or collectibles that are very fragile and are big, and you have to kind of store them out, they're going to more easily get damaged and require more upkeep costs and all that type of stuff. Another issue is some way of grading or authenticating those items. So part of the reason why cards are so collectible, and why video games, for example, are so collectible, because there are grading companies authenticating them, which and telling us what condition they are in, which creates that increased rarity, which in turn increases the collectability and the enjoyment of chasing those down and collecting them, tying it into what we were talking about before. So I think that if you see toys being graded, if grading companies start grading, I collect a lot of Dragon Ball Z, and in Dragon Ball Z, there are a lot of toy collectors and Dragon Ball Z action figure collectors, and if they ever started to grade those, and that became, or it became a lot more popular, where a lot of people started wanting those things, I think that it, and put it in a display type of case that was easy to display, all of those types of things, I think there would definitely be more of a market for that type of thing. But the issue then is going to be that initial point, which is how many people collected these other types of collectibles, or were most kids from our generation really just collecting cards? And so that's what most of us are always going to want. But of course, if you look in the sports card market, sports memorabilia, collecting jerseys, signed jerseys, autographed balls, etc., there are all sorts of collectibles that are valuable. And so I think that you will see that, and the Pokemon card market is getting hot and getting popular, and the sports card market getting hot and getting popular are going to bring in more people into those other areas of those various collectible markets related to those specific collectible categories, we can say. So, for example, more people getting into sports cards means that they're more likely at some point then to also start collecting some of that sports memorabilia. More people collecting Pokemon cards, it makes it more likely that eventually they're going to start collecting, some other toys, games, trophies, the physical trophies, that type of stuff, play mats, coins. There are a number of people who started collecting Pokemon coins, or more of those people now. So I would expect that the cards can be used as a funnel into those other things, and then those other things can be used as a funnel to the cards. But it's a great question, and I don't know exactly. I think there's definitely going to be opportunity. The other part of that issue, though, is understanding rarity, right? How rare is this game that you're buying? How rare is this action figure that you're buying? And how desirable is that action figure going to be in the future? And I think you being someone who really understands, the passion behind some of those things would probably have that type of insight into why or why not other people aren't enjoying it, and what it would take to build out that sort of market. A lot of it is also influencers. So getting influencers to start collecting those things, talking about those things more, that will get more people interested and involved in those types of markets. All right, great, fantastic questions. Both those questions are A pluses. Next question. Hi, Jake. Kind of a random question. Once lockdowns ease across the world, do you think newer collectors will start to visit LGS/card conventions, etc., or will it mainly be seen as an online hobby? Yeah, I'm not sure. So I did think about this question a little bit. I think that, first of all, the hobby is so much bigger now, so I would imagine the in-person stuff is going to be bigger too. I do think that there are a lot of people who are clamoring for in-person gatherings. A lot of us have made friends this year online in the Pokemon community, and they want to meet people in person, and they want to go to card shows and big collector events, and also maybe worlds and other sorts of, and then for the players, they're really clamoring, I think, to be playing in person and being around people. So I think there's always going to be that desire for that. The issue is going to be, part of that is going to be the financials around that. And I think it's hard, and I think Mason's in the chat here, but it can, you really need to go and support physical stores and physical LGSs. If you're a player, you need to go play there, buy stuff, support the people who are supporting you, because it's so much cheaper to have an online store and just an online platform, and or for all the playing to probably just happen online. So we'll save on all those transportation costs. For the players to have to fly all over the world, it will save people. It'll save the stores and the sellers a lot of money, because they don't have to spend it on upkeep of probably having as many employees and also having a physical location, which is expensive to pay for. So all of that stuff is going to be, I think that there's going to be a desire from people to continue to want to be meeting in person. I think, I don't think the human race is going to move to, like, people don't want to hang out in person anymore and just want to hang out online. If it does that, then certainly those things will be a thing of the past. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be more of how do they make it financially viable, and it's going to take a lot of people who are interested in doing these things in person to really go out there and engage in that and spend money for it to happen. All right. So last question is, as the graded Pokemon market continues to mature, is it time to finally have the difficult conversation about the quality of PSA cards with the early cert numbers versus those most recently graded? I know you're a big advocate of buy the card and not the grade, but do you ever see a necessity or option for a company to open for a third-party verification on card grading, especially for higher dollar slabs? Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I think that conversation is happening more and more. I think that more people are willing to have that conversation. I think it will continue. How it all ends, how it all fleshes out, I'm not really sure. I do think that there will always be a coolness and a premium for owning a slab that says PSA 10, even if the card is a little bit weaker or as weak as a 9. I just think that's a bit human nature, that people want that. It sort of becomes a new item when it gets that slab, but I also think it's exaggerated right now to the point where people, not the whole market, I think more and more people are starting to do this, but not the whole market is even looking at the card. They're just looking at the grade and saying how much something should be worth. They're not even used to looking at the card itself. They're just used to trusting the grade. I also think that PSA is going to... I'm not sure, and all of these grading companies, they may have periods where it does seem like they're easier, it does seem like they're harder, but hopefully going forward, they do crack down, and we do feel like as a community there's really good consistency. Part of the problem, though, is that most cards are going to be between grades, right? Most cards are going to come in there, and there's probably a case to be made that it could be the higher grade, it could be the lower grade, and the person's just going to have to make that judgment call in that moment, and the person who buys it is going to have to live with it. It's part of why so much money is made on cracking cases, resubmitting those cards, either from one grading company to another grading company, or just back to the same grading company to try and get that higher grade and get that premium. Yeah, I think that it'll be interesting to see where that all heads in the future. I don't really know, but definitely is going to be some risk in terms of putting a lot of money in that PSA 10, for example. Paying that huge exponential multiplier. And is that really worth it? Do people view it as it's really worth it? I think it's part of why I love absolute rarity a lot more than condition rarity. Because absolute rarity, you just don't have to worry about any of that stuff. There are only 100, 20, 30, 40 of this card in the world. It's not, because when you buy a PSA 10 and it says, well, there's a pop 25, which is an extremely low pop, technically there are only 25 of that specific item in the world. But there might be 25 nines, 30 nines that look just as good to most people as those 10s, or 50 or 100 or 1,000 nines, right? When we talk about like something like Evolution Charizard or something. So I think that that's where you get into that area of like, you just have to make those judgment calls yourself. But it's important to talk about. And to your point about PSA, the earlier slabs not being as highly graded as the new slabs, I have old slabs that are better quality than some of my new slabs. So I think overall that's true. But it's not particularly, it's not a good way to think about it in the sense of, and you're not saying this at all, but in the sense of that, just buy the card and not the grade. They're old slabs that I think are going for a little bit less than they should because they're old slabs, and you can just get that re-slabbed, and it has the same card in it, and the card's gorgeous, and amazing looking. So I think all that's important. All right, guys. So thank you so much for the Patreon questions. Really appreciate all the support. Again, for those who are just joining the stream right now, welcome today. Thank you so much for coming. What we do here is, in the beginning, I go through some Patreon questions so that they can find those at the beginning. Now we're going to jump into some chat questions. I'm going to start at the top for those people who were here early and ask some questions, and then I'm going to try and hit as many as possible in the next hour and a half or so. And if you can take a second to like this video, if you appreciate all this free information and hopefully helpful information, that would be fantastic. And please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. So I guess a couple of things before jumping into the questions. One, I just want to thank everyone so much for helping us reach 5,000 subscribers here. Super exciting. We're going to be doing a giveaway on this channel, first ever giveaway. We probably won't be doing too many, but we are going to be doing a giveaway for the 5,000 subscribers. I think we'll probably do one for 10,000 as well, and those types of big milestones. We have 2 Shining Fates ETBs that were gifted to the channel to be given away, so that's phenomenal. Thank you so much to those 2 individuals who gifted those. I'm not sure if they want their names to be shouted out, but they know who they are. Great supporters of the channel. Thank you so much. So I will figure out exactly how to do that and what the best way to give those away, but we will be doing that. Second thing is I want to start a few new things on the channel. One thing I want to do is I want to start, and I think starting next week, on these live videos, I want to shout out a small creator that I really like, and don't ask me for shout outs, please. It's going to be more like me randomly coming to your channel, seeing that you're just like working really hard, putting out like great, wholesome, supportive content that I think is supportive to the community, and I'm going to try and shout out that channel. And I'm hoping that people will be willing to help support that channel a little bit, go subscribe, help them grow, leave a nice comment. I think we really want to help support small, and this channel is very small too, of course, but help support those small channels, because I understand what it's like to be a creator, be a new creator in this space, and feel anxious, and also get those like toxic hate comments that can discourage you, or not see the growth that you want to see to discourage you. So it's really important for us to, as a community and people who like this stuff, to support those people, because they do a lot for everyone's enjoyment of the hobby, and will be doing a lot for many years. And some of these creators that are just starting now are probably going to be very big creators, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, if they decide to keep doing this after all that time. So it's an important thing to keep in mind, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of support and encouragement early on. All right. Okay. Jumping into some questions. Let's see. Nice to see so many familiar faces. Usabuya says, thoughts about getting into graded video games, Jake? So I feel like it's just not my area of expertise. I haven't been studying that market. It's gone up a lot. I don't feel like it's probably a particularly great time to buy them. I'm not really sure about that. You know, like so many things, I feel like they've gone up so much. There's so many eyes on that. There's so many more knowledgeable people in that community than I am. I don't feel like I have any sort of like competitive advantage or relationships in that community particularly. And I definitely played a bunch of video games growing up, but I'm not like a huge gamer in the sense that I played like hundreds and hundreds of games and feel super connected to any games. You know, I definitely like played thousands, tens of thousands of hours of some of these games like Super Smash and GoldenEye and Mario Kart and so many more. But it's not. I don't feel quite the nostalgia and connection to owning a sealed game as I do to the cards, because I actually collected the cards as a kid. I didn't collect the video games as a kid. I played the video games as a kid, so I have a different relationship to them, which doesn't exactly cross over for me. So that's why the cards are more of a natural fit. But yeah, if they were cheaper, I'd love to pick up just like a couple, Pokemon Game Boy games and graded games and throw them up there. They're just so expensive, so for me, they're not worth it. So I'm going to focus on cards, unless those maybe come down in value at some point, or I feel like there's a better time to buy. And then I have to really educate myself before I feel comfortable buying anything there. Greenwall says, hi, Jake, love the channel. If there was one Pokemon card related phone app, what would you want that to be? Others can answer this question as well. Phone app. So, I mean, what would be great is for us to have like a market app that in real time shows price details, price history. It would make people's jobs, it would make my job so much easier. It would make everyone's job so much easier to be able to track those things. I think someone should be creating that, and there'd be you'd make a lot of money. There'd be a lot of people who would sign up for like $10, $15, $20 membership to something like that. I can tell you that much, particularly if it was really well done, user-friendly. Again, just there'd be so much money to be made in that. And if I had the skills and or the time, I would probably try to make something like that myself or invest in that myself. So that would be on that market side. Would be my answer for that. All right. Ernesto Alvarez says, hey, Jake, question. What do you think about the 2009 Pikachu Victory Medals? Any details about their release or print run would be great. Do you own any? Thanks. Yes, I don't know, like, too much about the Victory Medals. I don't really know the print runs. I don't think there's anyone who really knows them. I haven't seen that info that knows the exact... I've seen a lot of them. I continue to see quite a few of them, although they certainly have disappeared more over the years. They're very popular. People really like them. So there's just not a lot of like insider data that I can give outside of that. There are certainly more of those types of cards than a lot of, I think, the Play Promo and Fan Club and some of that earlier stuff, I think. But these are also very popular, and they do have those great kind of like trophy artworks on them. I think they're always going to be valuable and collectible. David Diaz says, hey, Jake, have you noticed a slight correction in the Pokemon market lately? Are you still selling? Are you looking to buy anything? Yeah, so there are lots of, subtle shifts and corrections we could call these things. I think one thing that's really important to remember is that, and YouTube is going to be a problem with this because people are trying to make like catchy videos with like catchy titles. This single sale dropped 30%, now the market's collapsing type sales, or this card went up 30%, the market's booming again, that type of stuff. And the reality is like any one given week, any one given sale, it can really shift. I think anything within like 10, 20%, maybe even 30% for a single sale, particularly particularly if it's a sale that happens, particularly if it's an auction, and particularly if it's an auction that maybe is happening while a lot of other auctions are happening, or where that card has come up a lot in the recent weeks. It's very easy for those types of sales, low sales, to go through, and I wouldn't say that that's an overall change in the market. I do think that things are calming down, in the sense that when I talk to a lot of sellers who sell more than I do, they say that they're just not getting as much, they're not getting as many sales as they were. There isn't quite the fervor and the fear of missing out that there was. Although I think that, 2 months after Logan Paul, 3 months after Logan Paul, I think the hobby was lower, certainly lower than it is now. Vintage was actually lower then than it is now. We've had a bit of it's come back up a little bit. A lot of cards really heavily corrected from that period. We're talking 80% down, 70% down, 60% down, 50% down. We're actually more in a settled range. Because I don't think most people actually watch those price dynamics or know those prices, they're not aware of that. So they think now it's retraced, versus we've had some retraces, some it increases back in price, another retrace. I think the market is trying to find footing in certain areas. I think that the vintage end of the market is a lot closer to finding stability than the modern end of the market, which is going to be hit with lots and lots more product. The vintage is also going to be hit with a lot of product. So there's certainly many vintage cards that are going to see quite a bit of price instability because of varying levels of demand and product hitting the market. If you're buying into the Pokemon card market, just I think understanding that you're not buying into a particularly stable environment, although it's more stable now than I think it was a few months ago, and that I would be aware that prices may go up, prices may go down, may shift a bit. I do think that there are starting to become, to your question here, some more items that are interesting to me and where I'm watching them a little bit more. I wasn't watching the Pokemon market at all for buying, just for getting a sense of where the prices were to run this channel for a number of months, because I was uninterested at all of those prices, really. On the vast majority of things. The only things I were buying were some trophy type cards and significantly rare cards, and then occasionally a PSA 10 vintage card when I felt like it was undervalued. But now there's some softening happening in certain areas where it's getting back to the price points that I'm considering purchasing some cards, because I think that I do see potential upside on some of them, even somewhat short-term upside. I think that long term, I'm very bullish on the Pokemon card hobby. I've always been bullish on the Pokemon card hobby, although I think that it's very risky. When, we all would love to think that in 40 to 50 years, any PSA 10 WotC Holo First Edition card is going to be above $5,000. Those PSA 10 mucks are going to be going, and Fossil are going to be going for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. That would be unbelievable. And it is possible in a very bullish world, as long as and what it would take is multi-generations of Pokemon fans, all of that sort of stuff, to get involved, to be engaged and want that, and be interested in the first generation, which I think that they will be, to want that card. As we see in sports, modern sports card investors love collecting, by and large, the really old vintage stuff with players that they never even knew and never even grew up with, showing that, and the comic book market's the best place to see that, is that everyone wants the original vintage comic books that came out before these collectors were even born. So this argument that vintage isn't going to be the most desirable and the most valued, and I don't think that's true, right? Again, with that stuff. So that's, to go to your question, that's what I'm looking at buying. I'm looking at those first appearance cards, right, to see if any of them drop within a price range. In terms of selling, I'm always selling, but there was only at the height of Logan Paul was I actively selling. Now I'm sort of I'm actively selling, but I'm patiently selling. I tend to mostly sell to people who contact me and ask for specific things. I don't have any items anymore that I feel huge urgency to sell because I feel like they have no long-term upside, or because I don't even really like the items that much. So I think that is where we're at. I would prepare yourself for more retraces. I would also, it's possible that the market may correct a little bit more first. I don't know. I think we're getting into territory where the most likely scenario is that some cards are going to retrace, other cards are going to go up. And when you get into that type of environment, that's a much healthier environment where the whole hobby isn't overinflated like it was a while back. Outside of trophies, trophies were the only thing that in my opinion, that wasn't inflated. I mean, base set first edition PSA 10s were, I think, very inflated. So, the most desirable, highest demand, some of the rare set cards, I think, were way overinflated. I think that the only cards in that period that weren't inflated were the trophy cards because people didn't know about them and the influencers weren't hyping those up. And those are the cards that I think are going to see do the best in the long run and be the highest earners. But during, as I've said, through that time and time again to try and get it through to people, is that during high demand periods, it's the highest demand set cards that are going to do the best. But during those lower demand periods, it's the trophy cards that are going to probably continue to go up in value because you're still going to have those 1,000 hardcore collectors who are just going to have more and more money to spend as they go through in their careers. And it's not dependent on a massive amount of demand to hold those cards up. Okay, so that's my overview of where we are at currently in the market. Hopefully that's helpful to people. I think that, again, being patient, being calm, having a plan for yourself, not putting yourself in a situation where you have to sell, like those are the keys to success in investing and in collecting. E says, about to go have Easter dinner with family, but hope you have a good chat, Jake. We'll be sure to watch the uploaded version. Yeah, thank you so much, E, for just coming by and saying hi, and thank you all for being here. As a lot of you guys know, I am Jewish, so I don't celebrate Easter. So I appreciate those who are here and apologize for hosting this on an Easter Sunday where other people may not be. I'm just trying to keep it every Sunday, doing it unless there's a huge conflict for me. And then we'll probably do it on a Saturday or something else. All right. Okay. Kelvin Corp says, hey, Jake, how do you think about the Japanese Pika promos like the Pretend Comedian Pikachu, the many Pikachu cosplay promos? I'm a huge fan of these Japanese promos. I'm going to try and go through a little... I answer questions so slowly. I try to give the most in-depth answer with every detail I possibly can. I'm going to try and hit a few questions quicker. Let's see how it goes if I can do it. So, love the Pikachu promos. The keys are going to be the rarity and the quality of art and the standoutness of art. There's going to be a lot more Pikachu promos in the future, but there are always going to be Pikachu collectors who collect just Pikachu and want all of those. I would look out for the crossover Pikachu, like the Scream promos, like the Pikachu Mario promos. Like when they make more of those types of promos, those are going to do the best, I think, in the long term because they have crossover potential, particularly like a Pikachu Mario Luigi, where Mario and Luigi Nintendo collectors are also going to be into that. Paul Clark says, how do you think the big stores like Troll and Toad are adapting to the current Pokemon market? So a lot of those big stores, because they're always selling, they sold a lot of product, and we're always selling product way under what it is now, like 8 months ago, a year ago. So, for example, like a Dave and Adam's Card World and a Collector's Cash, I was buying a lot of cards from them a year ago, kind of as the surge was happening, because often these big stores, they're not as actually aware and engaged in the little intricacies of the market as someone like me who watches it every day and has very like specific things I watch. And so they actually can be slower to move and to change their prices and also tend to be more cautious. So what I saw from them is I think that they really changed their relationship and stance on Pokemon. This is just my perspective. Those companies can come out and say their perspective, but I think before all of this happened, they were actually really pricing their cards very low to sell. They were usually the lowest priced cards on eBay. Not necessarily Troll and Toad, but like, DNA Card World, for example, is a really good example. And so they were always like one of the cheapest options, if not the cheapest options, because they were being priced to sell. They wanted to sell them. They didn't really have faith in the long-term Pokemon market, and or that's just how their business runs. They need to sell their product so that they can get more cash to put it into something else. You know, they were probably more focused on sports. You know, maybe didn't see this as a safe investable vehicle as compared to sports. Whatever they were thinking. So they were pricing them to sell. Then, quickly, when the boom happened, there was about a 2-3 month period where they didn't realize it, and so I was buying a lot during that period. Then, all of a sudden, one day, when I went on these stores, it was like they were so much higher than even eBay. I think that there was this realization that they were selling way below market, and that their feeling of like, okay, maybe we're really running out of this product. We don't have a lot. And that's how these stores tend to operate, is when they have a lot of something, they want to sell it. When they don't have a lot of something, they price it higher and higher and higher, because they're not as, they don't have as big of a need to sell that, because they don't have as much money in that, just sitting in that, you know, doing nothing, or they're not as exposed to that. Those are all of the things that these card companies are thinking about, you know, and again, these card companies have so much money and sell so many cards and have so much inventory that a $400, $1,000 PSA card, these types of things is very little to them. And so they can underreact or overreact on the margins, and you can kind of be aware of that when you're someone like me who's just, you know, particularly during those months, I was buying like, you know, 20, 30, 40 things a day. I was like, you know, hyper engaged on every little thing. How they adapt in the future, it'll be interesting. I think that certainly watching their buy lists is a nice way to tell what you know, those are safe places to sell to. If the market does become very illiquid, you know, right now it doesn't make sense to sell to any of them, honestly, because the market there's still so much interest and engagement. But if the market gets to a point where items become a lot more illiquid and you need cash, your best option in some cases might be to sell to some of these guys, because it's the only one buying those cards right now, and or it's the only one who's willing to buy in large lots and take on that sort of risk. And so being aware of their buy list can be important, particularly in those types of periods. So there's a lot I could say about those. I could probably make a video on it at some point. Okay. Keep moving here. Do my best to keep moving. Okay. You know, TCG says, what do you think about the Japanese Scramble cards? Extremely low pop and not many listings on eBay or Yahoo Japan. Wondering if they are very rare or if no one thinks they are worth selling. Yeah, it's a great question. So the Scramble cards are the Japanese version of the Rumble cards in English, which were released with like that Nintendo Stadium game. Oh my gosh, I might be wrong. I think so. And they have very unique art on them for those who have seen them. Very like they're like these like pixelated, like animated video game N64 type art on the cards, and I like them. I have them. I don't have there are a couple of them that are actually like trophy cards that are extremely rare, like the Eevee, which is the rarest one. They're probably only, I don't know, I forget exactly how many, so I won't just throw out a random number without looking at my notes, but very few of those. In terms of the normal ones, I think that there are quite a few of them. How many there are, I don't really know. I think that if those do go up in value, you will see more of them graded. How many, I'm not really sure. I don't see them very often, so that makes me think that they're probably not that prevalent, but also the price on them isn't that high, so maybe there just isn't that much incentive to sell them, so people are just kind of sitting on them. In terms of the Japanese sealed product, like the English sealed product version, the Rumble, you can probably go into eBay and type that in and see what they look like, and that they're being sold all together in those boxes, sealed. I don't know. I haven't seen what the Japanese one looks like. I should actually look that up now that I think about it. So I like to know how things are sold, but make a note for myself. But yeah, I like them. I think that they're sort of a niche sort of thing. Some people love them, some people hate them, type of thing. But they're probably undervalued. If I had to throw out a guess, I'd say they're probably undervalued just because they're not talked about enough, they're not known enough, and I think if more people knew about them, the price would be higher as compared to some other promos, so they're probably undervalued overall. Fino Z says, "Hi Jake, do you see that TCA Gaming got a base set 2000 label on his Charizard? Do you think that base set 2000 cards will start to gain some momentum now that PSA is grading them?" Yeah, I don't know. It's a great question. I think it's just going to be a wait and see type of thing. I don't have any great insight. My complete speculative guess, which is worth almost nothing on something like this, is 20 to 30% increase in price. But we could see a 50% increase. We could see only 10%. I'm not really sure as compared to the unlimited counterparts. There are a number of those still out there. There are a number of them in Europe. There are guys in Europe. There's this famous dude, I guess, or whatever, talked about in Poland, who supposedly has massive amounts of those, and might now start sending them to PSA if PSA ever opens again, right? So, in the long run, that type of thing will affect the amount that are graded. Another interesting thing will be, as PSA does more and more of that, where they start to label certain things that they didn't before, it'll be interesting to see, do people send those back in for relabeling? Do they not? Can you be on the lookout for those that are already graded without people knowing, that type of stuff, if it becomes very valuable? The same type of thing happened with shadowless cards and no rarity, where there's a period where they started to become more valuable, but most people didn't realize it, and there are a number of people who were able to take advantage of that and grab a lot of them for about or close to the same value as, particularly with no rarity, as the regular rarity stamped cards had. Amjad al-Baghdadi says, "What's your opinion on the new TCG MetaZoo, which has some aspects of Pokemon? Would it be a good investment for the future?" Oh boy, MetaZoo. So, I mean, I think it's an interesting thing. I think that, first of all, the fact that someone like Gary, one of the most well-respected and beloved members of Pokemon hobby, is saying MetaZoo's great and putting MetaZoo out there is, of course, going to help it. The fact that Rudy made a video about MetaZoo, are talking about it's a great investment. The fact that they're launching it in a way where the Kickstarter, I think, only has 2,500, and then they're going to put out 25,000 of the first edition. I think they might do multiple waves of the first edition. So I'm pretty aware of what it is. It might make the Kickstarter box valuable. Of course, it's already over $1,000 for those who don't know. Similar vibes to Flesh and Blood, as people are talking about. I personally find much more value in things that have age, that have a connection to me as a child, rather than something brand new. And I think when you're buying into something brand new like that, a lot of it is that speculation that it's going to go up in the future and it's going to be beloved in the future and people are going to connect to it in the future. And while I think that's possible, all games have to start somewhere. All new franchises, new EPs, whatever, have to start somewhere. I think when you buy into something like that, it's extremely risky. And without the influencer push, I wonder if that would be worth anything at all. Or probably no one would buy it at all and no one would care. I have to say that. That's my personal opinion. It may not be true. I do think that some people really like that art, but there are so many cool cards out there of so many cool franchises that have amazingly cool art. So I'm not sure they're that unique or that they're that cool that they really stand out to me versus all of the other options in card collecting. I think in terms of, I like that. I think it's cool that they're making a new game. I think it's cool that they're trying new things. I'm not sure that the whole fourth wall thing, it doesn't excite me. I'm not really sure that sounds too fun, but maybe don't knock something before you try it. Maybe I'll try the game. So those are my basic feelings on it. I do know that people do like the art, as I said before, and I think that that's genuine. I don't think that that's just people who are buying it and trying to shill it up. I think that people do really enjoy the art. I don't, but that's entirely subjective. I don't hate the art. I don't see the characters in particular like them. I don't like the designs of certain characters, to be completely honest. I'm not sure, like, Mothman, which I think is being talked about as, like, the Charizard, seems to be being pushed as, like, is not that... I don't feel a connection to Mothman. It's also just, like, a dark... I don't know. It's not, like, this, like, beautiful, colorful, interesting design to me. But again, that's completely subjective. I'm not an artist. I'm just a nerd card collector. So everyone's going to have their own opinions. I'm not someone who should be giving art critiques to anyone. So, and as far as will it be a good investment in the future, it very well might be. I think that whenever you have, and the last important thing to say on this, I think whenever you have these big boom periods, you're going to there's just a lot more money and interest in cards. And just like in the 90s, anything and everything has a card game connected to it. And that's kind of what might be starting to happen here, where there's so much new interest in the space and money in the space that we're going to start to see more and more companies try to start new games, try to start start printing new cards of old, popular IPs, that sort of thing, trying to create new games around those old IPs, some stuff being recycled. I think we're going to likely see that. I think that bodes well in some ways for the broader, probably, popularity and length of what I think is going to be probably a 3 to 5 year, hopefully, period of interest in this space. That isn't just going to die off after the pandemic. I think if it wasn't for the COVID, this whole pandemic thing happening, and this fear that so much of this is just being driven by the fact that people don't have their usual hobbies and are leaving the house, I would say definitely this thing seems like it's going to last for a while. Just because there's just too much genuine interest and enjoyment for it to, like, fizzle out or burn out in the next few months. I think if I had to place my money somewhere, I would say, yeah, we're looking probably at a few years of engagement in all of these hobbies, sports cards, Pokemon cards, fun. It could be a nice little boom period. It's possible, too, that with that comes, to answer the question that we were talking about before, comes higher prices on vintage Pokemon. It might go up even more, I think that there are cases to start buying again on some of those, particularly like low pop PSA 10 type cards that there just aren't going to be that many more of them graded. Not sure how much more they're going to be affordable at these levels. There are a few probably 10, 20 cards that might fit that description. Yeah, sorry, that's my long-winded response to MetaZoo. Somehow I got off on a usual tangent, but hopefully all of that helps you guys see where I'm at in my thinking and where I would put my money in terms of investing. In terms of fun, I'll probably I might buy one. I heard they're going to do multiple prints of the first edition, so as long as I can get it at retail, I might buy one just to open it, be a part of the hype. Sometimes it's fun being a part of the hype, You don't have to avoid it always. And the last thing I will say on MetaZoo, I think that cryptids, there is some popularity with cryptids, and I think that making a game around cryptids and making characters around cryptids makes sense because there are so many cryptids, and it allows for a Pokemon style, like, every card or many of the cards have a different cryptid, have a different character on it, and then you got trainers around it, and I think that works for a card game. It's very smart. And if the game is really good and well designed, it could take off and could be investable. All right. Alvin's Gallery says, I love how progressive Pokemon has been with its new sets. Battle Styles marks a new era for Pokemon. S5A is officially my favorite set ever, and the new Celebi 175 promo is incredible. There's so many cards right now that I'm really liking in some of these new sets, just like the arts, and I'm definitely gonna try and eventually buy some modern product again, do some openings, maybe a couple on camera, maybe a couple off for fun. All right. Enos Tamir says, what do you think of Platinum Supreme Victors as a set? Very specific question about Platinum Supreme Victors. Okay, I have to look up which ones are in this one. I know this set symbol, but I don't remember the specific level X's that are in this one. Okay, between Rising Rivals and Arceus. So what do I think about this set as a whole? Okay. Oh, right. These are the ones with the Articunos, the Moltres, and those secret rares, right? Yeah. I like those cards. I think they're cool. I don't know, like, I kind of think of Supreme Victors as definitely one of the better level X sets. Has a lot of different level X's, has like the Charizard, has the Rayquaza. I think Garchomp's a cool Pokemon. Blaziken is in this, right? It has those reverse foil cards. Those are some of my favorite cards, actually. I way prefer the Japanese ones because I don't love the reverse foil look. I love the shiny, like, star hollow pattern that they do in the Japanese. Those are the shiny cards. It has, like, the Miletich one, which is, like, or Milatich or Melodic or however everyone says it differently. I really, really love that card. That's one of my favorite cards. So this card, and this also has the Articuno, Moltres, and Zapdos. This set has a lot going for it. Yeah, fantastic set. I'm not sure exactly, what else to say about this. I like this era. I think that this era always got unnecessary hate. I think that there's a lot going on in this era that's really collectible and enjoyable. So, kind of just have positive things to say about it. In terms of the prices, these things are expensive. As so much is expensive. I'm not sure. I think when these sets and cards in these sets start becoming as expensive or more expensive than the like original Nintendo EX era, I think that's where I would put this era as should be slightly less expensive. And I also think there's going to be quite a bit more of these cards graded, like the level X's, the secret rares, all that stuff from this era I think is going to be graded from that original Nintendo EX era. And then the original Nintendo EX era did have the gold stars, which I think just brings it to that new height that this era does not have anything that I think, matches that level of collectability and chase, but it's definitely cool. All right, and I'm going to take a second. I see that we have about 155 people watching. Thank you so much for watching. If you can take a second to hit the like button just to thank me for all the free and hopefully useful information I'm sharing today, that would be much appreciated. Okay, I'm going to jump back in here. So many questions, guys. I'm sorry. Aiden M says, "Hey Jake, what do you think of graded jumbo cards?" Honestly, I don't own any of them. I would need to probably own some to really get a sense of like what they feel like. Do I enjoy collecting them? My concern would be like how big they are and then how I'm gonna display them, that sort of stuff. But definitely could be a market in the future for those. It's just hard for me with jumbos. I don't... It's like I have this just like emotional block that I don't like jumbos. I think part of it just comes from like how annoying all those jumbos are. like any collector who's opened up a lot of product, and I opened a lot of product when I got back in the hobby like a few years ago, modern product, has just so many of those jumbo cards from those boxes, and it's like, no one wants to buy these. What do I do with them? I don't know how to store them. They're just so irritating, you know, guys. So it's like, I think that I have that negativity. But when we look at like some of those like box topper cards from Legendary Collection, you know, Sky Ridge, right? Those are pretty awesome looking. So, Timway says, what do you think about E-Series rare reverse holos? Seems undervalued to me given the price of packs, and you only get at most one per pack. I think my issue with the reverse holos is that I don't love the way they look. Like, I'm not sure the reverse adds that much to me. But I think that the benefit of it, one is the point that you said here, which is that each individual one is really hard to pull because there are so many there's so many commons and uncommons in these sets, and rares in these sets, and holos in these sets, that to get a reverse holo of all of those is so difficult. So to pull any individual one is very hard. And then I think some of the arts, like common and uncommon arts from like Skyridge, for example, are better than the holo arts, or as good as the holo arts. And so having a chase version of that, where you can get like the Snorlax or the Lapras or whatever in that reverse holo, I do think adds a lot of value there and collectability. But you know, if it was a different type of reverse pattern that just had more kind of shine and different things going on for it, I think it would be so valuable. But the fact that it isn't, it unfortunately doesn't get the Legendary Collection treatment, right? Where the by far, I think the coolest cards from Legendary Collection are the reverse holos. So those are my thoughts on those specifically. A lot of questions here. Okay, I'm going to try to not skip these. All right. Matthew R. says, hi, Jake. How big of an impact does the company producing cards has versus the actual IP? Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Really good question. Yeah, I think there are two brands involved, right? One is the brand and popularity of the IP. The other is the brand and popularity of the maker, or the company producing the card. So, for example, I think that you have Wizards of the Coast collectors, because Wizards of the Coast is so popular because of Pokemon and so connected to Pokemon and Magic, that you have Wizards of the Coast collectors who are going to collect old Wizards of the Coast sealed boxes from an IP that they have no interest in because of that, right? And then you're going to have people collecting, you know, of course, like old Dragon Ball Z or old Harry Potter boxes or whatever, maybe not because it's Wizards of the Coast, but because it's, or Score in the case of DBZ, but because of the IP itself. So I think that both things are valuable and have different values depending on... I think the IP generally is the most important, because there just aren't too many companies that I think connect with people like Wizards of the Coast, that are on that level of, you know, Decipher, maybe, that are on that level of, like, collectability. But I could be wrong. Jody Matamo says, I spent like 8 hours straight yesterday on TCG Player and now have $5,000 worth of cards in my save for later and $700 in the cart. Dangerous, I should have stayed away. Joji says, grading is becoming the normal. Grade everything. Some good conversations happening here. Glad you guys are hanging out and talking. There's a lot of knowledge and experience in this chat, so hopefully, even though I always get so far behind, it's still enjoyable to engage with the other experts and knowledgeable people until I finally get to people's questions. Okay. Tasmanian Damien said, should Eevee be as collectible as Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, seeing as Bill always has Eevee as a starter in the Game Boy games? It's just sort of a market decides conversation. Eevee is not as important to me personally, but I like Eevee, and I think of Eevee as maybe like the fourth, a fourth starter, or a Pikachu, but maybe a fifth of sort of an unevolved stage one. Apples GG says, hey Jake, any thoughts on Korokoro Shining Mew? This card seems to have some rarity, but maybe more condition rarity. Yeah, not a rare card. So a phenomenally gorgeous and amazing card, not at all a rare card. There's a lot of those out there. Okay. But getting them in really high grade, there's some rarity, but as you can see, if you look at the pop report of that card, there's a lot of those. Compare that pop report to most vintage Japanese promos, and you'll get a sense of that there are so many of those. Josh Harris says, how do I reinvigorate my love for collecting Pokemon cards if I sold my collection last November at the peak? Well, first of all, congratulations. That was a very good time to sell. I think hopefully it's setting new goals and taking the money that you made, from that and putting it back into Pokemon cards. And or taking a break, taking some time off. I think also, you don't have to buy any Pokemon cards to hang out on live streams like this and talk and have relationships and engage and talk about the market. I think probably owning Pokemon cards is going to make it more interesting, probably, and enjoyable, potentially. But I do think that is an important thing to be said, that there's a lot of ways to enjoy this hobby, and owning cards and collecting the cards and building out binders or showcasing your cards, displaying them to other people or to yourself, is only one way to enjoy the hobby. There's tons of Discords that you can hang out, talk in. You come on channels like this, come on so many channels, right, to hang out and talk. So in terms of starting to build your collection again, I think that it's the journey, not the destination, right, guys? Like, the fun, if you are a collector, what is really fun, or a huge part of the fun, is not the owning. It's not the end result of having everything that you want, although that can be very satisfying and wonderful to display, and it can bring you a lot of joy to look at that. It really does. But there's this whole other part of collecting, which is the process of finding those deals, finding the cards you really want, being able to afford them, saving up money, setting up a budget, saving over time, proving to yourself that you know how to budget, you know how to save, finding that good deal, making that purchase, adding that PSA card to your collection, adding that booster box, adding that raw card, completing that binder, getting closer to completing that binder, setting a new goal, setting a harder goal. Like, all of that is so much the joy that I think it's so important that, at any stage of collecting you're at, no matter how big or small your collection is, just try and enjoy where you're at, and recognize where the contentment and where the fun happens. And it happens in that journey, not in that end goal of having that Instagram post that you get 1 million followers and this or that. I mean, obviously there can be that type of fun in the hobby, but that's not the collector fun. The real collector fun is that fun of, people collect for themselves, I think, and to display for others. But I think that a lot of it comes from that, the people who have that collector gene I think are really happy just collecting for themselves and mostly are silent. And I know if I wasn't making this channel trying to like help people think about these things and sharing my knowledge and experience, I would still be that silent collector who I spent the first 2.5, 3 years in this hobby never saying a word to anyone, having a blast just building my collection. I never had an Instagram. I never, I posted once on E4 like, 2 years ago. I was very private and was doing it for myself. Okay. Tyler says, would you consider the Grail Gengar card as the PSA 10 Misaki Gengar? I'd have to think about that. The Grail Gengar card. Could be. I'm not thinking of any other ones off the top of my head. Gengar might be in the background of a rare card or something, but I can't think of a card or a card that I would want more. There are some rare ones, but not a card that I would want more. Yeah, probably. I mean, the Misaki cards are amazing, but they're not, like, that rare, I think is an important thing. And you guys know how many Misaki cards I have. I love the Misaki cards. They're one of my favorite cards to collect. But they're probably, like, I think that there's something like an estimated, like, 35,000 Gengars in the world. Now, very, very few of them get the PSA 10s because, as we know, the Misaki mark is a big issue on these cards. Misaki mark being that they most of them have this damage on the back due to the way that they were handed out, or many of them do at least. So it's very, very difficult to get in high grade, but that's a lot less than set cards. Okay, so but there still are quite a few of those in the world, and quite a few were likely distributed. Some great conversation heading back and forth. Let's see. Okay, MC Crafter says, hi, thanks for the great content. Do you think it would be worth, from an investor perspective, to sell less rare, old, minty cards to buy a few that are more rare, old, and minty? Yes, I do. Yeah, I mean, it would have to depend on the exact cards, because there are cards that are rare that aren't necessarily like that investable because there isn't demand there. But I think selling cards that are much easier to get for cards that do have high demand that are much harder to get are going to be cards that are much more investable and over time do the best. So, just from that investor perspective. Got a super chat from Josh. I appreciate that, Josh. Thank you for answering my question in such detail. As a silent collector and only collector in my family, I have nobody to talk about these sort of things. Thanks, Jake. Yeah, I think that's key too, Josh. Like for me too, I have Rafi, and I met Rafi, runs this channel with me, and we talk about collecting, but I had no one else, and I didn't know Rafi was collecting until a while into my collecting, and so it was sort of like a secret, of sorts. Not a secret that I was necessarily like hiding, but a secret that I wasn't like sharing with people because I didn't think people would have any interest in my collecting habits. And so that's what's so cool about these online communities is all of us are so many of us are so like-minded and are the same types of men and women here and love this sort of stuff, that it's just great that we can all connect on platforms. And so even if there are only like 100,000 of us in the world, it seems like there are so many because we can all connect in these spaces and talk about it. All right. Jody Matomo's videos. Jake, what are your thoughts on the Incredible Premium Trainers XY collection box? Have any? Hell, come to think of it, how much sealed product do you have? Will you be sharing with your series? So I don't have any. I think the Premium Trainers XY collection box is awesome. Rafi's a huge fan of it too. It was just such a great value at the time because you just got all those full arts from it. And they were great looking full arts, and you can add them to your collection. And so I remember I bought one, Rafi bought one. In terms of like what they're doing right now, the prices that they're at, I'm not sure exactly offhand. I'd have to, that would be like a Patreon question I could look up and give more of an in-depth answer to after doing some research on it. But it's a great, it's one of the best, I think, collection boxes and that have come out in the last. It's one of the only ones, that and maybe like 10 others, 5 to 10 others that I think are like worth buying over a booster box or some other thing, because you get so much value from it in terms of all of those awesome like full art promos. Blitz Foray says, Pokemon, ever hear of the 2002 Pokemon Center Osaka Japanese promo? It was released to commemorate the New York Pokemon store opening. Due to the way it was distributed, they are hard to grade. I don't know that specific promo, no. Not offhand. If I saw a picture of it, I might remember it, but it's not one that I own. There are a lot of like really kind of niche cool promos from those eras. I'm sure I have come across it. I have studied Bulbapedia and PokemonPrice.com and other things for years, but because of the amount of them, I often forget one. Like as I learn new ones, I forget old ones type of thing. And you can only be an expert and watch so many cards at once. Chris Chin says, thoughts on price disparity between EVO booster boxes versus ETBs. ETBs going for $200 versus the booster box at $1,000. Yeah, doesn't make sense. ETBs at $200 are a much better buy than the booster box at $1,000 because of the price per pack, and also I personally think ETBs are cooler. They're cooler looking. They have like Charizard and Blastoise on them. I think they're more displayable, and you get the other stuff in it that may be collectible, or have some value somewhere down the line. So I think that's pretty cut and dry. It just shows the irrationality around those types of things, to put it bluntly. People just buying because other people are buying, and everyone just uses, and I'm going to make a video that I think is going to hopefully be really helpful on the 5 like common mistakes I think people are making right now, that I see some people making, and I might touch on one in that video. Zach Johnson says, hey Jake, do you think black and white era full arts are undervalued since they were the first full art cards? Yeah. So, I mean, what's interesting about those cards, some of them I think are probably undervalued. They are very difficult to grade. There were not a ton of black and white sets printed, and the black and white boxes are going for so much right now that some of them probably are undervalued. I think within Modern, those are some of the better buys, potentially, and some of the more overlooked cards. Those were also cards that were very, very popular when they came out, because they caused a lot of that excitement, and they were so difficult to grade that there was a lot of fun and chase in trying to grade them. So there was a lot of like organic collector interest in them when they first came out. The market was so small. They're kind of forgotten about, I think. But I'd have to look at what the prices are. Again, I think that those are not as good as like the secret rares, and the secret rares are not as good as the level X era, and a bunch of like the level X Diamond and Pearl era cards, and those level X Diamond and Pearl era cards should not be as high as the Gold Stars. So I think that it's about, there should be a relationship. I think that all of those eras are investable and are becoming more and more investable here. Over time, and I am bullish, and this is coming from a person who's bullish on the long term of Pokemon. There are good arguments to be made that Pokemon may not do as well as I think, in the long run. And I certainly made them. I think one of the biggest misconceptions of my channel is when I was talking about a lot of my bearish predictions in the short term, and not making predictions, but talking about my concerns about the market, it comes from the irrationality and the irrational exuberance that people have, and this idea that Pokemon can only go up, and that we're not going to have these ups and downs, and that 90% of people being led by a bunch of new people also who are saying Pokemon is never going to go up. So I'm a believer, a strong believer that and I'm putting my money where my mouth is in my collection, and also I love it, and so if they do go down in value, I'll have this wonderful collection. And at the end of the day, you can't take money with you, you can't take your collection with you, so it's all the same as long as you have money to live. But yeah. All right. Some more questions. Okay. People talk about MetaZoo a little bit. Mason Berry says, quote, "I don't feel a connection to Mothman, Jake 2021. Yeah, I'm trying to be gentle. And I think it's great that people are excited. I want people to be excited and to enjoy things. I think the problem is that it's people get caught up that really, are you enjoying it, or are you enjoying the money and the possibility of making money? Or do you actually really like the product, and where are you at in that? Okay? A lot of people get caught up in that hype and excitement, and then they spend money that they wish they didn't, type of thing. All right. Aiden M says, wouldn't UK print only impact raw cards, though? If it's PSA 10 or 9, would that make much of a difference if the grade was identical? I think you're having a conversation a little bit with people here, sorry. Pokemark says, what are your opinions on Radiant collection cards? Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Radiant collection, although I think that's just personal, because I have a lot of it sitting around. I haven't graded any of it. They really have blown up a lot in price. I think that there's better value for your buck in a lot of places from that investment perspective of what's really gonna stay up in value when I see the prices on some of the PSA 10s of some of those cards, because I know those are very easy cards to pull. There are a lot of them, and there's still a lot of those packs left, and honestly, a lot of that was driven up by YouTubers hyping, not doing anything nefarious, but just talking a lot about things like generations, right? So, yeah. So, for me personally, there's much better value in all the other things we were talking about today than Radiant Collection. But there are a lot of people who really like Radiant Collection from a collector's point of view, from the art. It's very unique. There are a lot of unique cards in it. I know someone who I like very much, Tom from Graded Gem. Shout out to them and their great channel. You guys should be supporting and checking them out. Loves Radiant Collection, and has loved it for years, way before anyone else started loving it. So there is certainly interest in it, and genuine interest, and has always been genuine interest. But you also have to understand that those cards and those packs became almost worthless for a while, and nobody wanted them because of how many were printed, and because the majority of the market moved on pretty quick from them. I'm not sure that they have a lot that's going to really stand the test of time, so be careful. It's all about the price point, though. I'm not saying that those things aren't collectible and investable. It's all about what price you get them at. If you get them at a much lower price, then you're getting Level X card, Diamond and Pearl era cards, or Black and White era, some of the Black and White era, harder to pull cards, rarer cards. Then I think that if you're getting it for half the price, or a fifth the price, or a fourth the price, then probably worth it. Potentially that's an understandable ratio. Okay, so we're in sort of the home stretch here. I know that there are so many questions, and I did my best to get to as many of them as possible. I guess I'll keep chugging away a little bit here. in the middle, and then I'm going to head to the bottom just so we can hang out a little bit before the end of the stream. Again, thank you all so much for joining today. Jacob asks, Jake, what is your favorite starter Pokemon, both Baby and Final Evolution? Usually I would say Squirtle. I'm not sure that I have a strong favorite. I think I like all of them a lot. I find that true for a lot of Pokemon for me, that I like a lot. Like, I love so many different Pokemon, just like I love so many different sets. I'm such a collector, and I like them all. So when someone asks me, like, what my favorite is, there's certainly Pokemon or things that pop into my head, but I'm not sure, like, I feel... And you guys, and tell me what you guys think about this. Do you guys have, like, strong favorites? Like, this is by far my favorite Pokemon? Or are you like me, and it's more... You like a lot of different Pokemon, and it can change? I think that I initially chose Squirtle when I first started, and like Squirtle the best, but I played that game a lot with all three. Probably Charmin. Nah, I like them all. I love them all. It's like when I choose one as being my favorite, my brain immediately says, but the other two are awesome, and you love the other two also. It's the same thing when I say, like, Dragonite's my favorite, and then I think, well, I love Gyarados, I love Alakazam, I love Mewtwo, I love Mew, I would say that I like Dragonite, Gyarados, I like an Alakazam, I like all those Pokemon better than I like Charizard, Blastoise, or Venusaur. I guess if I were to choose a first form and a final form of these starters, it would be Squirtle and Charizard, probably. Wheezy Wallace says it was nice to see you in Randolph chat. Yeah, it was great talking to him. I really like him, and I like what I think he's a good ambassador for the hobby and for the type of channel and type of content he's trying to make around so many different Pokemon related topics. Bionicle Forever says, thoughts on the Digimon TCG? I don't have much thoughts on it, honestly. I'm just not a huge Digimon fan, so I'm just not the person to talk about it. I do think that there is a following, and, it's doing well, and I hope it does well. So, got another super chat here. Thank you for the donation, Jose. Soltero says, what are your thoughts on Heart Gold Soul Silver 2010 Japanese promos? For example, Latias and Latios, I recognize they have a very low graded pop. Yeah, so a lot of the promos from that generation are extremely difficult to get in 10s because they came out, or a lot of them came out of tins and were just like beat up really bad. And so it's also true for all like the level X promos. They're just very hard to get in high grade 10s or 9s. The problem we get into here is like there are so many promos and there are so many options that what is going to make something stand out and be collectible? Like I think the level X's have a identity in the hobby and people know them and are recognizable. I think they'll be more and more recognizable over time. And so the level X promos will be connected and valuable and collected within that. The problem when you have promos that aren't connected to something and are just sort of, they're only connected to being like a Black Star promo, or they're connected to being like numbered in the set, is you will get people who want to collect all the promos. So there certainly will be some demand, but I'm not sure it's ever going to be as wide a demand as for like full art trainers. All the full art trainers that someone wants to collect, or all the level X's that someone wants to collect, or all the shiny secret rare type card from that set, or the rainbow rares, or whatever it is, if that makes sense. Or all the Pikachu promos, or you just have to put yourself in that mindset of how many different options there are going to be and why is someone going to choose that. But the positive of a card like that is first of all, there's just not that many printed of a lot of these things because this is not a high time in Pokemon. There's probably not that much product printed, and even though there wasn't that much product printed on top of it, there aren't going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of damage on most of them. So hopefully that's helpful. Thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. Dan Jake Elephant says, thoughts on low-grade WotC era stuff. So now would not be the time, just to be completely honest with you, that I'd be buying low-graded WotC stuff, because I think that we're going to see a lot more of it hit the market. I think in the long run, low-graded WotC stuff, particularly like first edition holos, is likely going to do very well, hopefully, as long as Pokemon stays strong, which nobody knows, but hopefully it does. But in the short term, as PSA, more and more cards come back from PSA, I think that probably within the next few years, maybe within the next like 6 months to a year, before a lot of the cards come back from PSA, it's going to be, there's not going to be that much supply of that stuff. But I think as the supply comes back over the next 2 to 3 years, you will likely see a dip in that part of the market. And just more supply, a lot more supply hit the market. And that's when I think that there might be some really good deals, actually, and people might start buying that stuff up. And then I think it will hit that equilibrium point. And once it gets there, then I think it'll start going up again. Wherever that point is, I'm not sure, but probably not the best time to buy that at the moment, I would say. Nice seeing some people, familiar faces here. Vintage Pokemon Hunter, brother, Sakari, great channels. Nice to see you guys both here. Vintage Pokemon Hunter says, send me the jumbos. That's how far behind I am in the chat. He likes the jumbos. Rocket Game Corner says, do you foresee a future where there are no vintage boxes or packs available? I wonder how many are actually left in the world with all the breaks and openings. Yeah, so I foresee a future where there are less and less. And what I hope is that there's a future where these types of items come up for sale 3-4 times a year, where you see 3-4 times a year an unlimited base booster box, or 3-4 times a year you see a first edition box. That'll be the next step in the hobby, and when you see that, as long as the demand is still very high, or near as high as it is now, or even higher with multi-generations maybe coming in, you will see the prices go up, because that sort of fear of missing out will hit again of, if I don't buy this vintage booster box, I might have to wait 3-4 months, I may never get one. And right now, vintage product is still so available, as long as you have the money, that we're seeing that, I think, push prices down and keep prices down. I think in the future that may change, and those might get a lot more expensive. In terms of them, there not being a lot left in the world, because they're going to be continuously opened. There are still a lot of those boxes left, like first edition fossil boxes, unlimited base booster boxes, first edition jungle, rocket, the gyms. There's a lot of that left. How much, I'm not sure, but I think more than the more bullish people think. Let me put it that way. I think that people would be surprised at how many less PSA 10s there are of these cards versus how many booster boxes there are left in the world. And I do wonder if people realize that if the booster box prices would be a little bit closer to those PSA card prices, just because those PSA cards are much, much rarer, at least for now, than those booster boxes. Now, will they ever get closer? They'll certainly get closer over time. Will they ever cross each other? That would be interesting, where there are more PSA 10 of a card than there are number of booster boxes that we think left. The thing that's tricky is that unless they start grading booster boxes, we're never really going to know that. Okay, we're never gonna have that. This is how many are left type of thing. Boy Hugoven sent a super chat, appreciate that, and asks, hi Jake, what do you think of the Shadowless cards in the long term? They seem also lower pop than the first edition. Yeah, so quick hit on the Shadowless. So one of the reasons that Shadowless is lower pop is a couple reasons. One, because a lot of them were not graded nearly, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, tongue-tied. Because the prices were lower on particularly like PSA 8s, PSA 7s, PSA 6s for a long time on those Shadowless cards, it didn't really make sense to grade those lower shadowless type cards. So they're a lot more shadowless. I'm very confident there are a lot more PSA 7, PSA 8, PSA 7, PSA 6, PSA 5 shadowless cards left in the world as compared to first edition base set holo cards left. That being said, I don't think that there are that many like PSA 10 shadowless cards left. They're so hard to get. They were so hard to grade even out of pack, and the pop reports really reflect that. The other thing to note about shadowless cards is that some shadowless cards are actually graded as just regular base set unlimited cards because initially PSA didn't distinguish and put that shadowless symbol there, and so those aren't reflected in the pop report. They're reflected in the unlimited pop report. I love shadowless. Big fan of shadowless. I think that shadowless. I think that the PSA 10 shadowless cards are highly undervalued. I'm just going to go out and say that. Now, I do own some, so it is, but it's the type of thing where I'm kind of put my money where my mouth was, and I just think that I saw like the Raichu, the PSA 10 shadowless Raichu sell in this heritage auction for about like $7,400, and there are only 24 PSA 10 shadowless cards, shadowless Raichus in the world. And to me, for $7-some thousand, that's an insane bargain. That's like an unbelievable bargain. When you think of that Snorlaxes and like all the cards and all the Neo cards, like all of the cards in this hobby that are selling for over $7,000, and you can get a base set shadowless Raichu that only has 24 PSA 10s in the world for only $7,000 just seems like crazy price differential when you think about how much shadowless packs are going for. Like, think about how much more shadowless base set packs are going for than first edition Fossil and Jungle. First edition Fossil and Jungle is going similar to regular base set unlimited. So it doesn't make sense, guys, right? There's something off here, is what I'm trying to explain with that. But so I don't know how that will correct over time. I think that part of what's tricky with shadowless is it seems like there's this better first edition option, even though the first edition option in a lot of cases isn't as difficult to find in PSA 10. So it creates this weird dynamic where people aren't exactly sure how much they should value these cards or how much they should buy these cards for. I do think over time, the rarity of those cards is going to have a strong effect. I think it was a big mistake for that person to sell that Raichu in an auction. Because I just don't think enough people know how rare that shadowless Raichu is and understand and have the knowledge and respect for those harder to grade shadowless cards, and throwing it up in an auction is just a big mistake. Full transparency, I have like the shadowless Raichu, I have the shadowless Clefairy in PSA 10, I have a shadowless Mewtwo, I have a shadowless Gyarados, I have a number of those shadowless cards in PSA 10. Take that for what you will. But those are some of the last cards I would sell. Those are cards that I'm going to hold forever. I think that those are cornerstones of the hobby, the set card hobby. And I'd much rather sell those cards than like a first edition PSA 10, Fossil, Gym, even first edition Neo, which I love, and E-Series cards. All right. Echo Base Collectible says, longtime fan, would you be able to shout out my channel? Old time 99 collector here, 4 times world's top 32 player and nationals judge, also ran all the East Coast regionals for years. That's awesome, man. Well, you're getting a shout out right now. Echo Base Collectibles, all the questions I read out get shout outs. In terms of, I am going to start shouting out, as I said in the beginning of this, I'm going to start shouting out just like a small YouTuber each stream in the beginning that I want everyone to support, but I'm not gonna be shouting out people who ask me for a shout out. I'm gonna just go around to channels that I like and try to just give them more attention and just kind of handle it like that. All right, but I will definitely check out your channel, Echo Base Collectibles, and that's awesome that you've been here since '99 and that you're 4 times world's top 32 player and nationals judge, and you also ran the East Coast regionals for years. Sounds like you're probably a channel worth checking out for everyone, and that everyone should probably go check out that channel after this. Because there's so many knowledgeable people who have been in the hobby like that forever, who I'm sure are sharing their wonderful collections and great knowledge with the community. So I will check out your channel also. Boy says, what do you think of the Munch retrospective cards? I've kind of touched on them before. I like them. And I did talk about them a little bit earlier on, just saying that they were one of the better promos. So I think I'm going to leave it at that and try to get to some questions that haven't been asked today. Okay. I think I'm going to skip to the bottom. I'm sorry. I know there are like 100 questions probably that I'm skipping, but it just is what it is, guys. All right. I'm at the bottom of the chat. How's it going, guys? If anyone has another question they want me to answer, they can throw it down here, but otherwise we can just hang out and talk. For the last 10 minutes, I tried to speak very quickly today and get through as many as possible, and I hope that it was useful. Who's talking down here? Got Shreddy Breck in the chat. Parker Kish, Blitz Foray. How's everyone doing? Novus Vetu says, what are some good Pokemon TCG Facebook groups or Discord? I'm a relatively new collector, really into vintage. Thanks. So as far as Discords, I'm actually going to start becoming more involved, and I'm going to say this to my Patreon too, in like Squeaks and Radar's Discord. So you guys can catch me there, probably having some nice spirited conversations with those guys on the hobby, where we can. So if people want to join that Discord and hang out in the voice chat with us, we're gonna do that. And I definitely want to invite and encourage like other creators, people like Shreddy here and other people to come hang out there. I was going to start a Discord of my own and talked with Shreddy and actually a lot of other people or a number of other people like Joe from Omnipoke about starting a Discord a while back, and I just didn't get around to it, and it's just a lot of work running it, and I'm already kind of stretched pretty thin because I have like a more than full-time job outside of running this channel, and I'm already doing this in Patreon and buying and selling Pokemon cards and tracking the market, so I'm already pretty busy. So I thought it would be better just to join theirs a little bit. I'm not in charge of that. That's not my Discord by any means, but I'm going to make an effort to hang out there, and those guys are so knowledgeable, so you should go there and support them anyway, and support their Discord anyway. And it also seems unnecessary to probably have like too many more of those types of Discords, and where we can all just kind of be in like one place and have those conversations. So that's going to be a really good option. E4 Discord is a really good option, and there are a number of Discords off of E4 that are really good. E4 in general is a great resource for connecting with other collectors and investor types. In terms of Facebook, I don't use Facebook for Pokemon too much. Verbank is the big one. I actually am using Facebook more for my other card hobbies, because it's a little bit harder. They're smaller communities, and that's sort of the only place that I'm able to find those sorts of things, and they don't have big platforms like E4 and Discords that I know about, at least. So that's where I would start on those types of things. I hope that's helpful. Zuman Mia says, McDonald's 25th anniversary worth investing in. I would say not at the moment. Maybe in the long run. I'm not sure what the prices are on those. I assume the prices have probably fallen from where they were at one point, which was pretty crazy high in the beginning. I could be wrong about that. Maybe they've come back up. I would say that there are probably better options. I think that the original McDonald's promos are still way undervalued and should be worth a lot more before I would be collecting like the modern McDonald's promos, even though it's like the 25th anniversary promos. I do think that in the long run, those cards could be very investable and be worth a lot. I'm just not sure there's a rush right now, and that it's where I would be focusing my attention and money on. But, it is McDonald's, which is a huge brand and has a long history and is connected with Pokemon. It is, the starters, and it is the 25th anniversary. So even if they are pretty common and they're easy to get right now, they may not always be. And they do have quite a number of things going for them in the long run. All right. Happy Easter to you as well, Bridge Burner. Okay, more questions coming in here. Gonna try and answer a few more, and then we will be at our 5 o'clock time for today, and I will have to run. Let's see here. So we've got Hakeem asks, do you think it's a good idea to sell a decently sized childhood collection that isn't in very good condition and use that money for cards that are more valuable / you want them more? From an investment perspective, yes. From a personal subjective collector perspective, no. I didn't sell my childhood cards, but that's just a personal decision, and I think that financially speaking, and to get a more valuable collection, it's probably the way to go, where you can sell maybe some of the cards that you're less connected with, to fund some, cards that you would prefer to have now as an adult, that sort of thing, or get your collection or business started. Probably a good idea. Shreddy Brex says, thoughts on the vintage market compared to 6 months ago, despite modern being hotter than ever before? So I talked a lot about this earlier on, Shreddy, just my overall sort of market take. So I'm not going to repeat it too much here. Definitely encourage people to go back and listen to that. But, the overall summary is something like, there are cards now. There are starting to be cards again in the vintage market that I am considering buying set cards. But for about 6 months or 4 or 5 months, I didn't buy any set cards. I think about one set card, or maybe 10 set cards, one holo card, and then just kind of some cheap set cards that here and there. I am starting to pay more attention again and get back into it and watching every auction more, because I am probably going to start buying again if the price dips another 20 to 30% on a few cards that I'm looking at. I'm not going to share those specific cards, of course, but that's where I'm at. So I think that it's getting to the point where we're getting close to where there might be some opportunity, and I don't expect the market to. If I had to guess, I would expect that the market doesn't collapse that much more, particularly on the vintage side, particularly for the PSA 10, PSA 9, most popular, least populated cards. So I think that it still easily could go down another 20, 30%, but I think we're getting to a point where it's less likely that that's happening the longer this lasts. I think there's actually a decent possibility that cards might go back up in value at some point. I think over the next 1 to 3 years, we're going to see some stabilizing happening, and hopefully we'll still be all part of this like bullish growth period. I think people got way ahead of themselves with Logan Paul, and there was just a ton of irrational exuberance in the hobby. Then I think we had a really strong correction on a number of cards, pretty much every card outside of the trophy cards, but really big corrections on certain cards. Then it kind of came back up a little bit. Then we have had another little bit of a correction right now. This correction is much smaller and less intense than that Logan Paul correction, which is a good thing. It means things are probably settling out a little bit. I think that we're going to find some settled prices where people feel more comfortable, more confident. We're going to have people hopefully saving up money, spending again on those vintage cards. I think where you really want to watch, Shreddy, is do the number of vintage cards for sale slow down? Because what's really going to drive the market up is, I think, so much of the behavior this year and so much of the prices this year came from speculators selling to other speculators, because the same card with the same cert just kept coming back on the market at like higher and higher prices. And I think that when those cards actually get sticky in people's collections and start disappearing from the market, that is what is going to push the next increase in prices up, and it's hopefully going to be more steady and sustainable. I think we've had influencers and awareness push the hobby up a lot, and there's been a lot of uneducated buying, fear of missing out, irrational exuberance on how markets work, and I think we're going to shift from that hopefully to a more educated, buyer base with a higher percentage being collector investor types that aren't just here just for the flipping speculation short-term profit, but are here to also build collections but also make money, and that type of environment for a while. And where some of these rare items get, as I said, sticky in people's collections, and then that helps push up a next sort of bull run. But all extremely speculative, guys. Hopefully you will consider my thoughts, but make those decisions for yourself. Of course, it's all very speculative. Are you excited for the Mega Mothman? Ski.read has the best comment for today. Are you excited for the Mega Mothman EOX Gold Star First Edition Level X Rainbow Rare VMAX? To the moon, man. That card's going to the moon. Yeah, Mothman to the moon. Alright, so it is past 5 o'clock today. Let's see if there's any last minute comments. Okay. You're welcome, Shreddy. No problem. Thanks for joining today. Shreddy Beck says, regardless of the prices, the interest seems to have dipped in deals, at least those being tried in Instagram stories. Yeah, I think that there's less of that intensity and urgency, and talking, as I said before earlier, talking to a lot of my buyer friends, they're not seller friends, they're not selling as much. It is that interest is slowing down, but they're still selling a lot of like the high end stuff, and there's still a lot of interest on the high end stuff, and trophies have been gone up a lot in value. So things like Worlds promos and other sorts of things that I was talking about on this channel for months, they have gone up during this period. They've actually gone up a lot in value. Some of those cards have like tripled in value, doubled and tripled in value. So again, it's what I would expect. I would expect all these rare cards need is like a little bit of demand. There are like 15 of these cards for sale in the world, Not for sale in the world, graded in the world. A lot of these types of cards, there are only 100 ever printed, only 200 ever printed, only 50 ever printed. It's just a very different item, and it's going to have a very different price trajectory than these set cards and of course modern set cards. So thank you all so much for hanging out today. I'm going to end the stream here. Really appreciate you all spending the time. If you enjoyed the video, take a second to like it. Please subscribe to the channel and support all of these other great content creators in the chat. So many of the content creators here have channels, and it'd be great if you guys, gave them a like, subscribe to their channel. My goal is to create a community of channels where we are all sharing information, having debates, having conversations. I think that's the best thing for the hobby in these spaces. And there are more and more great channels coming out all the time. So, again, thank you so much, and I will see you all next Sunday for the next live. Take care.